this story really began soon after the formation of the state of Telangana, when, it was not just the government, but the people of Telangana started looking for Telangana's own identity, whether it was in culture, whether it was in architecture, or in couture, or in cuisine. So it was around this time that I began to travel around rural Telangana looking at architecture, not religious architecture, but temporal architecture of the everyday people. And on one such visit, I happened to come across this picture not the picture, the stepwell that you see in this photograph here. We were actually picnicking under the clump of trees that you see in the picture on the right side. And someone said to me in Telugu, "Ikkada bavi undandi meer chustara," which translates to, "There's a well here, would you like to see it?" I was expecting to find a hole in the ground with water at the bottom of it. And when I walked up to this parapet that you see here, I was stupefied by the size, by the proportions, by the robustness of the stepwell. And it really took my breath away. It was a moment in my life that really made my hair stand on end as an architect. So that was when I decided that we have to try and learn more about these stepwells. And I came back to the Hyderabad Design Forum and we put our heads together and said, let's take this forward as a proper research study. So to do that, we first look at stepwells right from the very basic concept. I'm using in the next couple of slides images that will be familiar to you. You must have already seen these. These are stepwells in other parts of the country, mostly in Gujarat, but I put them here just as illustrations. So what is a stepwell? A stepwell is a place where you have steps and the steps descend to water. And there may be multi-story structures with galleries, platforms, pavilions, and chambers, which are of great architectural significance. They are most often rectilinear in plan, and they are inverted pyramids in cross-section, and more than 30 feet deep. These are just generalizations. The maintenance and management of water is very important because water has to be accessible to people at all times. So the steps actually permit you to go down to wherever the water level is sinking or rising as per the climatic conditions and as per the groundwater table. Most stepwells are lined with stones of blocks of stone, mostly without mortar joints. That's because they let the water permeate through the joints and they don't block the joints with the mortar. And most commonly, granite is used. Human proportions are used in the design of stepwells. As you can see, these are women who are holding pots of water on their head, and they are walking quite comfortably up and down. So there is a huge, important emphasis on the human body and how comfortable it is to walk up and down the steps. What is the purpose of a stepwell? This is to contain volumes of water from natural springs. Some stepwells are used for leisure and relief from the severe daytime heat, such as now. If you ever happen to go into a stepwell in the summer, you can actually feel a tangible change in the temperature when you go down there. Women significantly use stepwells as collecting of water for household purposes was traditionally their role. Stepwells are used as a space of social interaction, religious rituals, and cultural events. So you can see that there are so many purposes that a stepwell is serving. Sometimes they are just as cool, quiet retreats for meditation and prayer. Zamindars who want to do something good for society actually also commission stepwells, and a lot of stepwells that we find in Telangana have been commissioned by zamindars, by Samastan Rajas, and so on. Stepwells are used for ritualistic ablution by devotees and annual temple festivals. So very briefly, the history of stepwells in India. The very first ones we find are in the Indus Valley and in Mohenjo-daro and in Western Gujarat. They are very ordinary, simple, basic stepwells, round in shape. But then in Gujarat, you also find these stupendously beautiful stepwells. Every inch of stone that you see here has been carved These are not merely for collecting and storing water, they are temples in themselves. So you can see that the religious aspect of the purpose of a stepwell is really being given a lot more important here. Stepwells in Telangana are found in forts, temple complexes, sarais, and agricultural lands. So these are the four major verticals of stepwells that we have found. I'll repeat, they're in forts, sometimes even at the top of a hill, which is completely granite, where you least expect to find water. There is a stepwell. Of course, practically every temple complex has a stepwell because temples need water and devotees need to clean themselves before they enter the temple. Sarais along the highways are places where people who are traveling on camel or on horseback or elephants, they need to stop and get water. And agricultural lands, of course, the very basic need is to have water available for agricultural purposes. So the known stepwells, when we began the research, we marked them in red dots on the map on the right side. There are a few in Karnataka, but most of the rest of them you can see are in Gujarat, Rajasthan, and northern India. So then we overlap this with a climatic map of India. And you see these pink streaks which are going across the western part of India towards the north, and a pink streak starting from the bottom and coming up to Telangana. So if you overlap the red dots, you'll find that all of them are actually in this pink zone. So we figured that if we are sharing climatic conditions with Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Karnataka, then there must be stepwells in Telangana also, because people needed to access water under similar climatic conditions. Lo and behold, once we began our research, we started to come across many, many stepwells. This is a collage of different stepwells we found. We've taken one picture of each of them to put them together to illustrate to you how different they are from one another. Different shapes, sizes, different building materials, different styles of architecture. So it becomes more and more complex to study, to analyze, and understand them. So to do that, we did a pilot project, and we took 3 stepwells, one in Kolanpaka, one in Raigir, and one at Rachakonda. At the bottom, you will see we mentioned the district and the mandal. So we start with the first one. This is an aerial map, a satellite map of the temple. There is a museum there, and the stepwell is in that clump of trees that you see. So this is another thing that we find, is that all stepwells in temples are in the northeast, essentially. And even within that northeast quadrant, they are actually slightly off by about 11 to 12 degrees towards the east. We are beginning now to find the answers to that conundrum and understand why they are positioned there and why there is a difference from geographical north. So we first look at architecture in the vicinity. And this is what is today a museum. It may have been a temple mandapam. So this actually establishes architectural style. And by looking at the columns and so on, we as students of history of architecture begin to understand when the stepwell may have been created. What you see from the top, the picture on the left, is practically nothing. You could actually stumble down the steps without even knowing that there's a stepwell there. This one is the most basic stepwell, which is why I'm starting off the description with it, where there is a shaft and there are steps, and the steps are going down to the bottom of the well. And midway, there is a gallery, which you see on the right. So right now it's dry, but you can see that there is no mortar in the joints, and water seeps through and percolates through the joints and starts filling up the stepwell. One of the architects on our group is studying the construction technology, and she's looking at the kind of stone, the size of stone, the way the stone has been arranged in vertical and horizontal courses. So we are understanding now about the dynamics of structure in the stepwells. The picture at the right, you begin to see the bottom of the gallery. And if you look up from the bottom, this is what you see. What we have marked in circles are 2 protruding stones that are the basis of the pulley system. So this is the kind of drawing that we do. At the top right-hand corner, you see what is called a plan. And at the bottom left-hand corner, you see a cross-section. All dimensions are taken, And the plan is drawn at different levels. And you can see now the 4 columns that form part of the gallery. We take this to the next level of detailing, where anything that has been carved onto the surface of the stone is measured out millimeter to millimeter and replicated in the form of a drawing, which is digitized. In our title page, which you see on the right, you have all the information and the data that's required for the Stepwell. There are 2 different types of columns here, and we not only look at the column in profile, but we imagine that we are slicing the column at different levels horizontally, where the column changes from being a square base to an octagonal base to a multi-sided base and the capital. So these figures that you see surrounding the column are actually cross sections through the shaft.